Hello and welcome to the Home Yogi podcast. I'm so glad you're here. And I am honored to share sacred space today with Cameron Pellegrino. Hello, Cameron.
Hi, Christine. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so jazzed to be doing this with you. Cameron and I came to know one another through sort of the local healer scene here in Albuquerque. Found out that we had mutual connections through various, both in healing and EMS, and she's quickly becoming somebody that I respect and can call a friend. So I'm really glad that you're here. Cameron, sorry, over 20 years of experience in healthcare. And she brings a diverse range of knowledge, and that many people say that she delivers to help her clients navigate through tough mental health and medical challenges. She's a holistic registered nurse, Soma transformational breath therapist, Usui Reiki Ryoho master. She's a 200 and a 500-hour accredited teacher, the 500 in Kundalini, and a 200-hour meditation teacher, as well as a tantric practitioner. She is dedicated to empowering individuals on our journeys to health and healing. And when we were talking before getting started, I asked if I could mention that she is in the process. She said, I believe in the sort of final stage of becoming a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And what she said, I wrote it down because I think it's so beautiful. Vital Explorations, which is her business, her website is vitalexplorations.com, came from me not wanting to wait to help people with their mental health, which I think is so important. You've been doing this for yourself for a while.
Absolutely, I have. I've been working on my mental health for many, many years, but in recent years, of course, for like most people, we've had many challenges with mental health issues. And so with that, I really dug down deep into the practices that I already knew would be beneficial, all evidence-based practice stuff, and really dug in deep, found that deep transformation within me, and that has driven me to help to share this with others because it's really powerful stuff.
And so your journey, starting on the path that you're currently approaching the final stages of becoming a psychiatric, because you're already a registered nurse
I am.
with a holistic specialty.
Mm-hmm.
And then you started onto this path of becoming a nurse prac with a psychiatric specialty. And you had mentioned that in the beginning of that, I'm guessing that you're supported through the curriculum in really seeing to your own mental health, right? Usually when you're becoming a practitioner at that level, you're guided to some extent, right?
Absolutely. And so, in combination with digging into this program and digging into my own mental health challenges, I realized I still had a lot of healing to do. And if I'm going to be graduating as a mental health practitioner, I need to dig into myself and really heal some more of those wounds that I knew were still present, so that I could be there more fully for my patients, to walk the walk.
Preach, walk the walk. We can talk the talk all we want to, right?
That's it.
And that's really what we're about here with the home yoga practice source in Badlands Yoga. Is it's great to know postures and names of postures and names of breaths and names of meditations and to do all this reading. And walking the walk really is where our feet hit the mat and our butts hit the cushion, right?
That's it. And that's where the action happens. And when you make that action happen on the mat or on the cushion, it really does magnify and translate into every aspect of your life.
Yes. Yes. And I think one of the things that you and I connected pretty quickly about is that for everyday people, a home yoga practice can be an incredibly empowering touchstone that can help them move their locus of control, their sense of who gets to make decisions about who they are into their internal sphere, but also as teachers. It's not as if we leave this behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I appreciate about you is acknowledging that you, as I do, as everyone who's teaching anything does, we all still have our own work to do. On the daily, life circumstances bring up new things or old things brought back around. And we're doing the work as we share the work.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important for any teacher because it's not a linear path. Healing in general is not linear, but in the work itself, there's no end point. there's always something else that can be looked at and marveled over. So
What a beautiful way of saying it. Yeah, yeah. Finding the wonder,
yeah,
even in the hard stuff.
that's it. Especially in the hard stuff. There's really beautiful stuff to be had in the hard stuff. You fight really hard for the hard stuff. And so I think that makes the results that much more beautiful.
Mm, mm. Which of your paths, which of your certifications and trainings do you feel like you're using the most these days?
Oh, that's difficult because I use a little bit of all of them, and they're so many of them are intertwined.
Right.
I use Reiki every day on myself, on people I come into contact with, on a daily basis. It's wonderful. But I use breath work every day too, for myself, educating others about it. Those are both part of my daily practice, but as is yoga. I do yoga every day as well. And so I don't know that there's one in particular. And so I have a hard time when people ask me, well, what do you do? I tell them I like to keep it at that holistic registered nurse. And they're like, well, I don't know what that is. And I'm like, well, it really is all of this other stuff. There are so many things that I could list and so many things that I do use in practice that I don't have a certification in, but I've just had my own, education in it and used it on myself. And I feel I'm pretty confident that I know enough about it to be able to use it in practice and help my patients with it. Things like sound therapy and work with crystals and that kind of stuff. I'm not certified in it, but they're very helpful tools. So it's difficult to really pick one that I use most because they're all such powerful tools, and I think when used together, it's a really potent combination.
Well, and so there's so much to unpack in that. I think that as a society and as a yoga community in the United States, there's a little bit of certification lust, right? Like, I don't care whether a teacher has certification in yoga if they don't have a practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And certifications fit really well into business models. And so Mukunda Stiles, who was one of my first yoga therapy teachers, he used to tell us as we were in workshops and classes with him, I'm going to show you this today. You cannot teach this until you have practiced it every single day for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've done that, it is yours, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's
it is about practice.
Yeah, I get chills when I remember that was a moment for me of like, oh, right? And again, it hands the power back to the practitioner, to the individual. Like, I can give you books, I can give you diagrams, we can practice it for a weekend. That's all lovely.
Mm-hmm.
It's yours when you have practiced it in your life for 30 days. And in retrospect, 30 days seems pretty short, right?
It does. They say
Yeah.
it takes at least 40 to build a deep knowing of it. So,
Mm,
or at least
mm,
a routine with it. And then maybe the deep knowing comes after. But yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So circling back around, you mentioned Reiki, and you and I have talked about Reiki. You and I are both Reiki masters. But how do you tell people? So if you have a patient that you want to offer Reiki, or who comes in and says, I've heard about this Reiki stuff. What is it? What do you have a way of explaining it?
I do, and I'm not sure how understandable it is because some people do come across, I'm still not sure what that is, but the way I explain it is a Japanese technique of being able to move healing energies through our bodies and channel them into other people and be able to sense the energetic blockages within that person's subtle body field, because we all have electromagnetic fields that are created by our hearts, just like the earth. And so that electromagnetic field, we're able to feel that and feel all the way it moves throughout the body, and be able to clear those energies out and deeply relax the person so that they can come to their own space of healing. Because when we have things that are not moving, like stale water, stagnant water, things
Mhm.
are going to happen in that water and grow that we may not want. And so it's just like within the body, not only fluid, which is how I tell people that why deep breathing and yoga are so important to move those fluids around, but also energies are really important to move around too, because when they become stagnant, then things grow there that you don't want to. So you want to keep things flowing.
Well, and it's both growing, but also just thinking in terms of body tissues, right? If if we're stagnant for a period of time, and there's no judgment, there are all kinds of reasons that we some people are bedridden for to heal from big things,
Hmm.
or sometimes a woman is offered bed rest,
Hmm.
particularly toward the end of growing another human.
Hmm.
Um, and and then let's say you have an arm in a cast, right? That
Hmm.
that that's not getting a lot of movement in there for the 6 weeks, right?
Hmm.
And the tissues start to get stuck together. And that
Hmm.
same thing, I think, can happen with koshas and energy and all of the various layers of our beings.
Absolutely.
And I I appreciate I found Reiki. Let's see, is that true? I guess technically I found Reiki after I found yoga. But I got deeper into yoga before I got deeper into Reiki, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I was really appreciative when you are being taught Reiki through the levels and through the mastery program. You're asked to do self Reiki, right? And
Hmm.
you're given these 15 hand positions, and there are lots of new techniques and other ways, but there's like a program that you're given, and you're asked to do it for yourself every single day. And that's the beginning and the middle and the end,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then you, after doing these 15 hand positions every day for a little while,
Hmm.
you start coming up with your own, like, oh, I don't have to necessarily go here, right? And oh, maybe if I like, oh, that's an interesting experience. It's a process of becoming sensitive.
Yes. That's a fun one. I have noticed a stiff increase just recently in my sensitivity, and it's
Mm.
that's a fun thing to play with.
Well, and I'm convinced that Reiki is just plain our birthright. It happened like the system was systematized and named by a Japanese monk, right?
Mm-hmm.
But human beings have had this magnetic, piezoelectric, whatever you want
Oh
to.
yeah, and the
Oh,
shamans from the ancient traditions, they knew. They knew
yeah,
how to move that energy.
yeah. And so practice is sort of the backbone of all of this.
Absolutely.
How do you work? So you have right now sort of two spheres, right? In Western healthcare, and I love what you say on your website. In my experience as a nurse in Western medicine, I felt like there were limitations in the answers and options available to patients. I think that
Mm-hmm.
is such a succinct way of looking at it. But you and I have also talked about how you have endeavored to share breath work and movement and other things with patients.
Yeah.
What when you have somebody who's just starting out, who's never considered that the things they already do, breathing, moving, paying attention, could be used to heal themselves. How do you get them started?
Start with the breath. I start with it. You have it with you all the time. You've been doing it since you came out. And based on whatever that breathing pattern is, we can help reset your nervous system. We can help change the way that your brain waves are moving, to help get you into that calmer state. It also helps people really get into their bodies. If they've had significant trauma, especially, they're not able to get in their bodies. And it's a wonderful way to be able to gently just notice the breath and begin to get back into that body space and be present in the body. It's really powerful. On top of that, explaining to them the benefits, the health benefits of just changing the way they breathe for a few minutes every day and just being mindful of it. And then teaching them just the basic diaphragm. And there's so many different breaths. They can do so many different things, but just teaching people to bring that breath down into their bellies rather than leaving it in their chests makes just such a huge difference. And I think that's the buy-in. That's when they're like, you know what, this made a huge difference for me. What else can you do?
Yeah. Yeah. And when you say bringing it into the belly, you're really talking about breathing with the diaphragm so that it descends in toward the abdominal cavity and gives that massage all the way.
Absolutely.
And it also draws the breath further down into the bases of the lungs, into the back of the lungs.
Because they're pear-shaped. That's where the majority of our receptors, our oxygen receptors are. And if we're not using them, then they're just going to atrophy. And if you don't use it, you lose it. And it goes with everything. And so the more you practice bringing that breath down deep, you can be more efficient with your oxygen flow, more efficient with your breaths for longevity. I mean, there's just so many benefits just going to diaphragmatic breathing and nasal breathing rather than mouth breathing. That's another one.
Speak in my language. Say more about the difference and the changes you've seen it make.
Absolutely. So they have done some studies on mouth breathing versus nasal breathing. They've had people that were willing to, for 14 days, tape their nose shut so that they could only breathe in their mouth. I don't know who would sign up for that, but I am not going to. But anyway, so they did some studies and their health completely changed. Completely changed, going to be a mouth breather. And then they taped, they took the tape off and they taped their mouths up while they slept to make sure that they were nasal breathing. And the differences in the health status was incredible. Part of the reason for that is that when we breathe through our nostrils, it helps our bodies make nitric oxide. And it's similar to nitrous oxide, but it's not the same thing as what you get in the dentist. It does have a little bit of a lifting effect to it, but it's a vasodilator, which means it opens up your blood vessels and helps to provide more oxygen flow to the tissues, helping to relax you. And so if you have hypertension or just stress, it's a great thing to do. And then humming actually increases the amount of nitric oxide that you produce by like 17%. So those are like the three basic things that I teach people: nasal breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, and humming. Just those three practices are just so profound.
Absolutely. So there's also evidence, and I would have to go back and find it. It was about 3 years ago. They came out with some studies that showed that the nitric oxide produced with Brahmari breath, bumblebee breath, aka humming,
Hmm.
um, that it has a very targeted effect on the thoracolumbar fascia, which, and so back pain is a huge segment of healthcare, right? And it's a very complicated. The things that work for one person often don't work for another person, and
Hmm.
there are many different etiologies or causes for why people are having back pain. And so to have something that can help to relax the fascia, the network that connects your rib cage to your pelvis, game changer, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I found that out hardcore while I was building my practice with Vital Explorations. To build this beautiful client space that I'm sitting in, I had to clear out the furniture in this room. And so my husband and I were carrying some of the furniture up the stairs in our home, and my back went out on the last, thankfully it was on the last piece of furniture, but I pulled a muscle, and I'm a nurse and I was a CNA previously. And so I didn't always have the best back mechanics as a young kid. So I have a hurt back, and so I can re-injure it pretty easily. With that recovery, it was difficult. That was a hard recovery. I had a lot of inflammation, and that was another lesson that I was learning, that I need to
Mm.
cut down on my inflammation because I'm not going to heal with all of it. So that was a huge wake up call. But using bumblebee breath at night when I couldn't lay down to go to sleep because I was in so
Mm.
much pain. I didn't sleep for like 30 days, but when I did, it was because I had been humming myself or using a breath like bumblebee breath to decrease the pain so that I could get to sleep. And it was really powerful.
It's so, I love that you, the other thing that you, when you meet a healer, you can tell that they practice, they walk the walk, because they have these stories. So you have these stories, I have these stories of, and I know it works because, right? And the other thing that I think is beautiful about this, there's a certain vulnerability that is required of a healer, because it is, it's a mistake I made early on to think I do yoga, I can't get sick. Well, Ray Charles, there's this quote, and I don't remember the exact quote, but it's something like, nowhere in the Bible does it say you're not going to be challenged, right? And I'm not a reverend, I'm not a preacher, so I'm not talking about the Bible specifically.
Hmm.
Nowhere in yoga does it say, if you do yoga, all of your problems will magically disappear. If you do yoga, you will have the internal connection and the resources to find out how you can come to terms, whatever that ends up being,
Yeah.
right? And like you said, you have a hurt back. I have a hurt knee. And that may not be the case for the rest of our lives, but everybody has a part of their body where, if I'm going to get injured, it's probably going to be my right knee, you know?
Hmm.
Everybody has that. And knowing how to care for ourselves, that's healing. And knowing how to
Absolutely.
ask for help.
Absolutely. And that's huge. That
Mm,
is huge, is asking for help. Um, that's been
mm.
difficult. That's been another trial for me, but I guess that's another show. But having the daily practice really does, it does help. It it's tremendous. It gives you that space to just be with yourself
Mhm.
and find that space where you can just know what the right option is rather than having the swirling things all floating around at once.
The velodrome.
That's
Yeah, yes. So you would suggest that someone new set aside a few minutes a day, paid attention to the feeling of their diaphragm, descending as they inhale, lifting as they exhale,
Mhm.
guide it through the nose. You and I both know that there are what are called turbinates back here that
Mhm.
filter and humidify the air for us. That's another big part of it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then working with the sound of that humming.
Mhm. Absolutely. That those three things are really truly powerful for getting you back into your body, helping to calm your nervous system, and get you into that headspace where you can be able to be flexible and go with the flow of life.
What a beautiful uh, pause place for our conversation. I'm really thrilled to share this space with you, Cameron. And thank you. If people want to learn more about what you do, about how they could work with you, you're at vitalexplorations.com.
Yes.
And then are there social media presences that you prefer?
Absolutely. So you can find me also on Facebook. Just search for Vital Explorations. I'm also on TikTok. I do have a blog on my website, and I have some of those posts up on Pinterest. So not a huge Pinterest presence yet, but we're working on it. We'll see how it goes. And I'm pretty sure I'm also on Instagram too, because the Facebook and Instagram are linked. So I just post both places.
Excellent. And if anyone who was watching this is a healer in Albuquerque, Cameron is also an amazing resource for other healers. Uh,
Absolutely.
so thank you so much for sharing your experience with the path. And I look forward to more conversations with you, Cameron.
Thank you, Christine. I appreciate you so much.
Likewise, happy Yoga Day.
You too.